It's not logical for us to even consider traveling to the nearest star system due to the concepts of linear travel. It doesn't matter how fast you go, even if you can approach the speed of light, you still have to go from point A to point B, and whatever that distance in light years is, it takes way too long for us to consider feasibly going there and coming back. Well, if you can eliminate some of these concepts, is what is apparently happened with these craft. What they do is they're able to generate their own gravitational field, and without getting too technical, they are able to manipulate time, which is something we have been very much aware of for a couple of decades at NASA, is that gravity slows down time in contrast to what we normally think of as 60 seconds a minute and so on. There is no constant relative to that except in one place in terms of the gravity. In other words, the gravity field is the same on the surface of the Earth, but when you leave the surface of the Earth, strange things begin to happen in terms of time. Fact is that time speeds up the further away from a gravity influence you get. Well, these machines create intensified gravitational fields, which in effect slow down time as we see it, and are able to cut down on the amount of time it takes to go from point A to point B. The other point is that if they're able to focus a gravity field on another point, they're able to stretch or pull together points A and B as if you view, let's say, space is like a waterbed. If you put a bowling ball in the middle of the waterbed, the bed kind of wraps up around the ball. Well, this is very typical of what happens in space. If you create an intensified gravitational field, you warp the distances between the two. In other words, shortening the distance between A and B, making the whole concept more feasible. And that's, in a nutshell, really how these things operate, is by warping space and time and getting into some real interesting astrophysical sciences. It interprets into a much more feasible method of travel.
So it's not like getting from A to B, the old linear travel. It's,
exactly.
The technology is kind of antimatter.
Well, there are some systems that use what is referred to as an antimatter reactor, which is an extremely powerful system. It uses super heavy elements, well beyond those that we have been familiar with traditionally, like uranium. They are able to capitalize. Apparently, there's a low-grade B gravity wave, which is different than the atomic gravity that holds molecules together, that they're able to capitalize off that and amplify it. They use a series of amplifiers in order to focus it. It's a lot easier to focus 3 points than it is to just try to focus one. Typically, with a telescope, we'll try to focus one. What we've learned in deep space science, like in the SETI project, is that if you put one antenna here, one in Arecibo, and you spread these around the planet, you can actually focus 3 different points, get a much bigger telescopic view. Well, this is very similar to the types of things that they're doing with gravity waves.
So presumably they've taken some of these elements heavier than uranium down here, and we've now got them in our hands and they're being examined.
Now, that's another interesting phenomenon, too, is that we apparently have about 500 pounds of this, of the fuel, shall we say, the heavy gravity stabilized fuel, the systems that are used. How we got that is remarkable, because it only takes about 223 grams to operate one of these things. We don't even know how long. I mean, it's a lot longer than the average car will last, I'll tell you that.
It's amazing stuff. One last question. Why haven't we utilized any of this thus far?
Well, actually, we have in quite a number of areas. The development of the B-2 stealth bomber was one that I'm aware of, where an anti-gravity cabin was developed.
Sure, an impressive machine, but it's hardly a spectacular use of alien technology. I mean,
well, that's the point.
It's not going to take us to another solar system.
No.
So why haven't we been to another solar system if we have known all this for such a relatively long time?
Well, it's certainly, and that would be an advance. That would assume that we have a complete understanding of the technology to go to another star system. The prospects are we probably have used it to go to the moon. But right now, it seems that the focus at this point seems to be to learn how to adapt some of the alien-derived technologies into applicable human uses, one of which is to develop air transport that can carry large amounts of weight over long distances without the fuel requirements that we typically are confronted with.
We've been to the moon. Using this technology, you think? What?
I think that is
moon
true,
missions
yeah.
that we know about.
That we don't know about.
There have been moon missions that we don't know about.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Well, we could go on all night, Bob. It's been fascinating having you, and have a safe journey home. I know you're flying back tomorrow. Bob Oeschler, investigations analyst, and a man with a good story to tell, if nothing else. I think people will have enjoyed listening. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
The questions people are asking on the phone: no, he does not have a book out. It was a one-off 1FM exclusive. because of the fact that Timothy Good has a good relationship with this programme, who's a British expert on UFOs, and I have a good working relationship with Tim, and Tim put me on to Bob Oeschler. Bob Oeschler is an associate of his, obviously, and Tim, as a favour, said, look, he's in the country, he's seeing me, he's on a private visit, but if you want, I'm sure your listeners would be interested. I said, you bet. And so Bob was on the show, and he wasn't paid for the interview. He's not some charlatan going around taking money, whatever you think about it. A good old yarn, and he definitely is, I can verify, he's an ex-NASA scientist, and thanks for all the calls, a tremendous amount, as there always are on these occasions. Walking on the Moon